Lewis had always been the class clown. I had known him since elementary school, and he never failed to make me laugh, albeit at the expense of someone else. Itching powder, thumbtack on the teacher's chair, electric hand buzzers, etc., etc. As we got older, his pranks got nastier. Once, a teacher gave him an F on a big test, and in retaliation, he broke into their car and smeared fish guts under the floor mats. They could never completely get the smell out, and eventually got rid of the car. A few months ago, we had our prom and went to a party afterwards. I'm not too experienced with drinking and was pretty trashed after a few beers and shots. But Lewis kept going and going until he suddenly just seemed to disappear from the party. It turns out he had locked himself in one of the upstairs bathrooms and ended up dying from alcohol poisoning that night. Following a wake his family held for him, me and his friends George and Travis got together to hang out and talk about the good times we all had shared. Then Travis pulled out a Ouija board out of his backpack. "Come on, want to talk to Lewis again, guys?" he asked. I wasn't too big on the idea, but everyone else was really into it, and I eventually relented. We formed a circle around the board and placed our fingertips on the planchette. "Are there any spirits here?" I asked. Then the planchette began to move. G, E, T, F, U, C, K, E, D. Okay, come on guys, who did that? I was cut off by the planchette violently jerking our hands from letter to letter. L, E, T, M, E, G, O, I, W, A, S, A, T, R, E, S, T. The lights in the room slowly began to brighten and fade like someone was playing with a dimmer switch, and I felt the temperature drop until I could see my breath. "I was at rest?" Travis whimpered. We had all pulled our hands off the planchette, but it was still moving around, sliding from letter to letter, seemingly guided by some otherworldly force. The lights got brighter and brighter until the bulbs overhead exploded, and we were plunged into darkness. I heard Travis scream, and I pulled up the flashlight on my phone to see that the planchette had firmly lodged itself into his throat, and he was now sputtering and gurgling on his back. We called an ambulance for him, and he ended up being okay, but that was just the start of the heinous shit that would follow. The next morning I woke up and went to the bathroom to pee. Peeping out of one groggy eye, I aimed for the center of the bowl, but some magical force field stopped my urine from hitting the water and splattered all over the seat and floor. "The fuck?" I thought out loud, as I lifted the seat to find that somebody had saran wrapped over the bowl. I lived alone with my mother, and knew she couldn't have had anything to do with this. Then it hit me that Lewis had pulled this very prank at a sleepover we had years before. Things continued on like this for a few days. I would wake up and find a rubber spider on my chest, or that someone had replaced the sugar for my coffee with salt. Then one day, I went to put my sneakers on and felt a sharp pain. I yelped and pulled my foot out to find that someone had placed broken glass in the bottom of my shoe. I reached out to Travis and George to see if they had been having similar experiences, and I wasn't ready for what they told me. George told me he had woken up to a loud banging from his closet. He grabbed his glasses from the nightstand beside him and quickly shoved them onto his face to investigate. He said he wished he had turned on the light first because he may have noticed a rusty nail that had been driven through the left frame. It had skewered his eye like a shish kebab. And when he tore the glasses off, he ripped the eye right out of the socket. His parents found him in hysterics, his eye hanging from the optical nerve, bouncing off of his cheek like a fleshy game of paddleball. Travis had similar stories, but none were as horrific as poor George, who ended up having his left eye removed and replaced with a glass one. We decided that tomorrow we would get together once more with the Ouija board and try talking to Lewis. We met up the next day at Lewis's mother's house. We asked her if we could hang out in our friend's old room for a while. She told us we could, but she had some errands to run, so we would be alone for the next couple of hours. I felt the temperature drop once again as we entered Lewis's bedroom. It had been left untouched since his death, except for the urn on his dresser, along with a framed photograph of him next to it that had been taken just weeks before his passing. We set the Ouija board up once again at the foot of his bed. My heart raced as I placed my fingertips on the planchette. "Lewis, are you there?" I called out. Nothing but silence followed. "Lewis! Lewis?" Travis and George called out to the empty room. I was about to take my fingers off the board when George's shoelaces began to slide out of his sneakers like ropey snakes, and they wrapped themselves around his neck. He tried to get his fingers under them, but to no avail. Travis began backing up from the board and bumped into the dresser, knocking the urn off of it and sending it to the floor, where it smashed into a million pieces. I looked up at Travis and screamed. Behind him, the photograph of Lewis had come alive. He was banging on the glass frame and screaming something at us. George was turning purple on the ground, and his eyes were bulging out of his head. His glass eye had popped out and rolled off somewhere into the room. I ran over to the frame and smashed it on the corner of the desk. "Lewis, let George go, please!" I stared at the photograph of Lewis, who was now smiling and laughing. Then it spoke in an unfamiliar deep voice.
"Your friend Lewis is dead. Don't you want to join him?"
I was shocked. I just stood there frozen beside Travis, and I heard the tinkering of broken urn pieces moving around on the ground beside us. I looked up just in time to see Lewis's ashes and broken bits of urn go sailing upwards like a blast from a firehouse. They hit Travis's face and began filling his mouth, ears, and nose until there was nothing left on the ground. Travis began to shake and sputter before breaking out into full-on convulsions. His belly began extending until it was almost the size of a beach ball. I started to back away from Travis, but his stomach burst open, sending a mass of steaming entrails to paint the contents of the room. Coughing, I pulled a piece of Travis out of my mouth and realized I was still holding the photograph. But Lewis was no longer in it. Disoriented, I tripped over George's now lifeless body. I picked myself up off of the ground and ran into the bathroom to try and wash Travis's guts off of myself. I began splashing water on my face, but when I checked the mirror, Lewis was behind me. I spun around, but nobody was there. I threw off my blood-soaked hoodie and ran out of the house and down the street. Every car window I glanced into, I could see Lewis's grinning face right behind me. I ran deep into the woods and barricaded myself into a little foxhole. I'm prepared to starve to death before facing whatever entity is pretending to be Lewis. A day has passed now since all this happened. My phone battery is almost dead, and I wanted to post this to explain to everyone what happened to my friends while I have the chance. I can see my reflection in my phone screen, and I can also make out Lewis's face right behind mine. If I die, there's nobody left for Lewis. Nobody, except for you reading this. I hope you don't have access to a Ouija board.